Yeah, it's August. It's August 15th. I don't know. I'm cranky as much as I'm just tired of shitty comics and trying. That maybe that's the theme for this week. I tried new stuff again. Somebody taught me how to doing that because it just doesn't end well. I should be safe and never leave my house and never read books and never try anything new because new just leads to pain and sadness and disappointment. Anyways, that's Taylor. Hi, I'm Taylor. That's not it. I'm me. And this is the Cranky Comic Book Review Show. Or the Tired Comic Book Review Show. But that doesn't really roll off the tongue as much. There's not any alliteration. What is another? Is there a word for tired that starts with the letter C? Let me know down in the comments. Or don't. I mean, it's fine. All right, worst to best. Look, I tried new things. And these are interchangeably bad. And they're both X books, so there you go. I'll start with this one, Marvel Voices X-Men. I like the idea of Marvel Voices. It's usually about inclusivity and expanding the voices of that have been historically frowned upon or sheltered or not given exposure. And it tends to be a lot of different, more inclusive ideas about sex and gender and everything else than there has been in the past. And that's a good thing. The problem is most of the stories in here are just fucking dumb. And I've said this about other Marvel voices. I keep trying to give them a chance because I keep hoping for a diamond in the rough. There's one story in here. It's probably the shortest story of the bunch that I like. It's a Mystique story. And it's written by, hang on, I have to look. And it's given the Marvel shitty graphic design, so it's going to take me a minute. Jay Edidin, and art by Nina Vakoeva. I don't like the art that much, but the story, it's like a little, very, very short story, probably the shortest in here, and it's one of the more effective. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, 4 or 5. It's a little 6-page story, and it's a good one. The rest of these are just pretty stupid, and that's, I don't know if it's editorial, I don't know what it is, or if it's just like, short stories are harder to tell than long form stories. I think that's probably it. I think that's like there's some of it where you really have to condense down your story into something and distill it. And if you're given a shot, you want to like maybe swing for the fences or just try and cram too much in. But like there's just verbose pages of nonsense, and then the story itself is just pretty fucking stupid. And there's like the majority of these are just dumb stories. Lighthearted, which can be good and harder to pull off and harder to make entertaining, I think, than like somber and serious and whatever, or action-packed. But it's a bad book. And then, another one. I've been trying the X-Men. After the fall of X, I wanted to try. And we have Dark X-Men #1, written by Steve Fox. I think it's Steve, and maybe that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And art by a shitty J. Lee knockoff. It's Steve Fox. Jonas Scharf, whose art gets progressively worse throughout the book, which is really bizarre. And the story is not. It's split in two weirdly. And I understand what Steve was trying to do. But there's a time jump and or maybe not a time jump or like a sideways time thing that's happening in this book. But like it's not effective and not well done. So like all this crap at the end about Havoc, it's not good. And then the main story itself is just kind of muddy and all over the place, and also not good. And then when you get the chance to do splash pages, like the artist just kind of drops and lets you down. So this might be a little spoilery, but I don't know. It's not. I keep trying. Like Children of the Vault last week was good. It gave me hope. There's like that maybe they're setting off the mutants in the X books into a good direction, and like the general direction is fine. Not awful. Like hunted mutants and like as a stand-in for like minorities and like disenfranchised and people that have been trampled upon throughout their lives. It's not subtle, but it tends to work if it's done right. And the problem is it's just a shit story. And instead of focusing on like the reason they're downtrodden and then and then the reason they're being hunted out of bigotry and fear is just more like crappy action nonsense, and that's just, it's not even good crappy action nonsense in here. It's just kind of really bad. And as issue number 1 goes, it's a bad issue number 1. It doesn't give you a way into the story if you're not really familiar. It's got a little bit of the back tail, but not enough to know what you're up for. And then like, I don't know, it's just fucking bad. It really is. All right, next. I'm going to switch these around, actually. Another one I'm done with. I just don't care. I guess I should, maybe. Robert Kirkman's building a new expanded universe. And this is Void Rivals number 3. Lorenzo De Felici on the art. And the first 2 issues started strong. This one just kind of lost me. And the art has a lot to do with it. The art is just kind of serviceable by Felici. It's not great. And like, there's panels where you don't really know what's going on, and then you get the shitty character design where I'm like, I still couldn't tell which, even though the 2 characters are different, I couldn't really tell you who's who because they're not unique enough and they're not doing anything effective. And then like, the actual story itself is also not great. I know Kirk can tell a story, and it'll take a while to get there. It's just, I'm not along for this ride. Nothing about this has really grabbed me enough to keep me going. And like, I don't care that they're throwing in old toys from the 80s or whatever the shit that I don't know about, or like Transformers references or whatever. It's just not enough to get me into it. And, you know, I think it could be an interesting hook, but you have to still just tell a story that's worthwhile. And like, Void Rivals, it's just fucking boring. And then like, there's the Kirkman like hook at the end of the issue that's supposed to keep you going, but it's also not that surprising and not that. It's a dull book. It's just dull, and that's one of the biggest crimes in a comic. When you're reading monthly serial things, like, you can't be fucking boring. If you're boring, you're going to lose people, and he just lost me. So it is what it is. I'm bored, people, with life and the universe and everything in most comics this week. All right. Next, Astro Bots. I'm done with this one too, I think. It's not bad. This is Simon Furman, who was one of the writers in the original Transformers. And the art is actually really decent by Hector Trunick. Again, it's just these characters of the robots, they have not had enough personality for me to be able to tell them apart. And then visually, there's still, I mean, eventually you get going and you figure out who's who, but like, the robot design needs some work where you could have more distinct creations and more distinct ways of like telling which robot's which, because it's a robot book. Spoilers. Astro Bots. People trying to save and they're tasked with saving humanity. And spoilers, not really. I'm not gonna spoil it. It's not awful. It's just not enough for me to keep interest anymore. Like, especially at $5 a book. It's one of the pricier ones out here. It's Whatnot Publishing. It's probably Whatnot's best book, but it's still just not. I don't know. The art is solid. Character design needs some work, and then the story itself, it feels like a kind of Transformers tale. Which is, if you're into Transformers, you'll probably like this. It's just not enough. Not enough for me to keep going. I'm culling the herd. I'm thinning out everything in my life that doesn't bring me joy. I'm Marie Kondoing. I think I've said that before in the past, but like, it's true. I'm getting to the point where I just stop giving a lot of shit about comics unless they're exceptional. And there's not a lot exceptional this week. And speaking of not, but whatever. This is Alpha Flight number 1. It's the best. I think it's the best Marvel book. There might be nope, not quite. All right, not quite the best Marvel book, but it's better than the other X books, and it's technically an X book. I might be a little biased. I really liked the original first initial run of Alpha Flight back in the day. I know it wasn't great, but it was John Byrne, and it was my jam when I was growing up, and I liked reading it. And this has pretty much all the same goddamn characters, with, it turns out, not a whole lot of character progression from there. And like, either it's a reset and I didn't miss much, or they just decided, screw it, we're going back to Alpha Flight and we're ignoring stuff. The story itself, it's all right. It has a hook at the end that's not unexpected, really, and also not that original. And yeah, it's better than the other X books. The art by, I suppose I should tell you who it's written by. Ed Brisson is the writer, which he can be decent. He's hit or miss for me, and this is a miss, but not by a lot. And then the art is, I don't know, what the hell. Godlewski, I don't know the first name, I can't. Like, the problem, I really wish they just put the shit on the first page again like they used to in the old days, so you could be like, oh yeah, that's who it was written by. And, oh, hang on, Scott Godlewski. Yeah, it's fine. It's sort of like the Marvel House style, which kind of looks like Capuccio or stuff. It's just and mixed with a little bit of like manga anime touches there, and it's solid. It's just not exceptional enough for me to keep going. And like I'm not gonna get drawn into this because it's like there's nothing. The hook isn't hooky enough, and even with the nostalgia factor factored in, it's not enough. So I'm done. All right, another one which I'm real close to being done with. Something is killing my will to live. Number 32. Werther Deladra on the art, making the same goddamn fucking stupid, annoying art choices he always goddamn makes with like the panels that are nonsense. This is one of the more like talky issues. But yeah, look, if the panels don't line up right, none of the panels make sense, and this doesn't. This is supposed to be one panel across and then the page. I don't know why the fuck the guy keeps doing it. I don't know if it's a tiny end directing it in that way, but like it's really fucking irritating. And I know you've heard me bitch about it before. And then the rest of it, it's like he's got a decent thematic movie sense about him, but like it's just nah. And then this is mostly a dialogue-filled book, and it's a meeting of two characters whose meeting has been set up for it seems like 25 fucking issues, and then you get this meeting, and you're like, oh, that was it, all right. And then yeah, the main monster story goes nowhere. It's more of a little bit of Erica Slaughter backstory, very little. It's just nothing. It's glacially paced, and then Tyna's just spreading this shit out and like knowing he's got like his readers hooked now, and I think it's kind of lazy, and I think it's just kind of like 32 issues in where this is monster number 2, and like maybe I don't know. It really just seems like this duplicitite like arc has been going on for so fucking long that I am not going to say I'm done with this one, but I'm real close. Because I do like the world, and I like Erica Slaughter as a character, and like even with all the flaws of Deladera, however the hell you say his last name, his art, it still has potential, and it's fucking irritating me that it does. Like, honestly, it'd be better if it was just a bad book and I could just be done with it, but it's not. It's just not great. All right. This is the end. This is Daredevil number 14, the end. The last issue of Daredevil. It'll be back, I'm sure. It's Marvel. This is the last Chip Zdarsky Daredevil, and it's Marco Ricciotto, the art. And this is a little bit odd because, like, it feels like a weird jump from the last issue. Like, it doesn't feel like the last issue really resolved much. But this is the reaction to the last issue, if that makes sense, without spoiling what's been going on. So there's not really much actual Daredevil in this book, but Daredevil's everywhere. And I get what Zdarsky's doing. I appreciate it. It's not awful. It's a rather effective way to end his arc, and it leaves things open enough for whoever's going to come in next to like take it in their own direction and like either build upon what Zdarsky's done or just start over fresh without really a lot of consequences. So like I think he wiped the slate or like left it in a good place for the next person, and I think that like the issue itself is decent, but it also feels like a retread of like a very similar ideas of like last issues coping with loss or like the loss of characters in comics. It feels like there's not any real new ground that's been broken, and it feels like kind of a whimpering end to the saga, to be honest. It's not bad, but it's just kind of like I was hoping for a little bit stronger finale and a little bit better wrap up than this. So it's all right. It's just not amazing. The theme for the week. All right, next. We've got the Vigil number 4. Ramvi and Dev Pramanik on the art. Ramvi's the writer. This is probably the best issue yet because it actually progresses the story of the team a bit. It's gonna read it in trade. This is definitely should have been a trade wait for me. The problem is I don't think it's going to get like I'm going to bet money this is going to be 6 and done and not go anywhere, and I think it's a shame because I think Ramvi is just starting to, especially with this issue, set up a pretty interesting premise. If you're fans of the Authority or Planetary or like Justice League Dark, this is going to be for you. The art is not awesome. It's not awful. It's oh Jesus, I apologize. I'm going to butcher this. Devmalia Pramanik on the art, and it's serviceable art, and it's decent comic art, but it's not nothing super dynamic and amazing. And I think the art is holding it back a bit. I also think the way that like Ron V has structured this story thus far, 4 issues in, where you're like slowly peeling back the layers of an onion to learn some stuff about the team, which I get. It's a sort of standard way to do it. It kind of has hurt in this sort of crowded landscape of comics, and I think it needed a little bit more dynamic of a start. And I think that's kind of hurting it. And like so, the combination of like so art and a slow start on this book, I think it's going to just kill it. I think the team is really interesting. I think the hook at the end of this is one of the better comic book hooks at the end of the things this week. It's just kind of, I don't know if it's enough. And if I weren't 4 issues in, I didn't trust Ron V, I might even drop this one too, honestly. But I'll give it probably the 2 more issues it has just to see what's going on. And I hope it gets more, but I would just kind of bet this is not selling well and not going to do a whole lot. So, all right, next we're getting to the end. This is quick reviews because I'm cranky or tired. The Cull #1. This is a surprise. I didn't expect to like this one this much. It says Kelly Thompson with Matea de Ulis on the art. I'm awful with the art. It's got probably the best art of the week, honestly. The art is pretty. I'm going to guess it's digitally painted. Yeah, but it's pretty beautiful art. And like Kelly Thompson's telling this sort of like slow burn horror story where you don't really, and it's got a sci-fi fantasy element, and like you have to read and like look at the visual cues and clues that are going on in the story to catch up and like realize sort of what's going on. She's not really giving a lot of info. There's enough intrigue where you're like, I'm interested in these characters after issue 1, which is saying something. And I think it is a decent first issue hook as far as introducing the characters goes. Story-wise, not much happens. Story-wise, I get why it's set up the way it is, and I think it's not bad. I think the ending is enough of a first issue hook, like one of these comics seems to have, to keep it going. And I will be reading this one monthly if I remember. So like I'm going to at least pick up issue number 2 of this and see where it goes. It's my surprise of the week, and it does have sort of vibes of like Stand By Me, and maybe I know it was in the solicits compared to the Goonies. I don't really get that, but it does have sort of like this 80s teen horror thing, maybe like Lost. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of what else it would be comparable to, but like yeah, it's got this sort of 80s adventure vibe to it, which I dig. And then that combined with a really, really gorgeous art, it is enough to keep me going on this one. So one of the better books of the week. Not my favorite, but it's not bad. And then the favorite book of the week, which, I lied when I said the Afterlife was the best Marvel book of the week. Marvel book takes the #1 for me this week. Loki, number 3. Dan Waters on the writing is what's doing it on this. And then actually you get Jermaine Peralta on the art, and it's a solid Loki book. And like you get the trickster elements of Loki, you get the sort of like sense that like Loki wants to do good but can't help him or herself and doesn't always do the right thing or does the right things wrongly. And it's I like the tone and I like the sort of cleverness that Dan Waters is writing. He's writing a clever Loki story and like writing Loki as clever but not and a bit of a trickster but not an evil Loki. It sort of feels like the revamp of Loki that's been done in the TV series or through Marvel for the past like decade, where they've kind of revamped Loki instead of making them evil, just making them ambiguous. And this is an ambiguous Loki who is trying to basically get pieces of their ship that was made out of fingernails, and that's the premise for the whole miniseries. And then adventure ensues. There's Hulkling and Wiccan in this issue. It's a good issue. It's one of the it's the best Marvel monthly thing out right now, and it's only a miniseries. I think it's done after issue number 4, which is too bad. But yeah, this is great. It hits all the right buttons as far as the mythos and the mythology goes, it tells a good romp, and it has enough action and adventure to keep it going, but it's not an action-oriented story. It's just, yeah, it really was my favorite one, and Loki's been solid from the get-go. You can probably trade it. You can probably, or digital will reread it. It's like not going to be anything world-changing. It's not a Spider-Geddon, Carnage-y, your mom event where everything's like a brand new character and stuff, so if that's your speculation jam, just wait it out. You don't have to buy all these shit monthly. You're going to go broke doing it. Trust me, I'm going broke doing it. But, all right, that's what I got. I'm going to get out of here. It's, yeah, whatever. Don't be a dick. I'll see ya.